hitting a bullet with a bullet. For a long time, that's what missile defense was. An incredible challenge for sure, but at least you were aiming at a predictable target. Well, that's all changing. A totally new class of weapon is here, and it's forcing us to ask a much, much harder question. And no, this isn't some science fiction scenario. This is the reality facing defense planners right now. We are talking about hypersonic weapons, and figuring out how to stop them isn't just difficult, it's one of the most complex engineering puzzles humanity has ever tried to solve. So what is it that makes these weapons such a game changer? It's not just that they're fast. I mean, they're incredibly fast. But it's really a combination of things that basically throws the old missile defense playbook right out the window. Okay, take a look at this. This image shows you everything you need to know. A traditional ballistic missile. It flies in a big, predictable arc, high up into space and back down, kind of like a long pass in football. You can calculate where it's going to land. But a hypersonic glide vehicle, that's a whole different beast. It stays low, inside the atmosphere, and it can jink and swerve. It's the difference between catching a pop fly and trying to swat a ricocheting pinball. Let's break that threat down into 3 key parts. First, you've got the sheer speed. We're talking Mach 5 and up. That shrinks the time you have to react from maybe half an hour to just a handful of minutes. Second, maneuverability. You can't just plot its course and send an interceptor to meet it, because it can change direction at any time. And third, and this is really tricky, is its flight path. It flies in this kind of sweet spot, too low for the big space-based radars to track effectively, but too high for traditional jet fighters or air defenses to reach. It's designed to slip right through the cracks of our existing systems. So, if you're up against something that's super fast, unpredictable, and flying in a blind spot, how in the world do you even begin to stop it? Well, the answer isn't one single magic sensor. It's about building a massive, interconnected web of sensors that can piece together a track from the faintest of glimpses. And here's the philosophy behind that web. It's called a layered defense. Think of it like a series of safety nets, one behind the other. The goal is to give yourself multiple chances to take a shot, because with something moving this fast, you might only get 1 or 2 chances. So if a threat somehow slips through that first layer, the second layer is already waiting for it, and then a third. It's all about redundancy. But here's the key that makes layered defense actually work: integration. These aren't just a bunch of separate systems doing their own thing. It means a satellite in space can detect a launch and instantly tell a massive radar on the ground where to look. That radar then refines the track and passes the data to a Navy destroyer hundreds of miles away so it can launch an interceptor. Everything has to talk to everything else seamlessly. And this is a perfect picture of that teamwork in action. Up in space, you've got sensors like the HBTS, the Hypersonic and Ballistic Tracking Space Sensor. Its job is to look for the faint heat signature these things give off. Then, down on the ground, you have these incredibly powerful radars, like the LRDR, which can actually tell the difference between a real threat and a decoy. Alone, neither one is enough, but working together, they become the eyes of the entire defense system. All right, so having all these different eyes is fantastic, but it's totally useless if they're not all feeding into one central brain that can make sense of it all in a split second. And that's where the system's central nervous system comes into play. It's called C2BMC. That stands for Command and Control, Battle Management, and Communications. And really, it's the secret sauce. It's the software and the hardware that connects every single piece of the puzzle. It takes this absolute fire hose of data coming in from space, sea, and land, and it fuses it all together. It turns all that noise into one single unified picture of the battle space. You can see in this diagram how C2BMC is literally at the center of everything. It's the digital thread that connects the initial warning from a satellite to the final guidance command for an interceptor. It makes sure the left hand always knows what the right hand is doing, from the moment of launch all the way to the final seconds. Okay, so now the system can see the threat, and it can think about the threat. It's time to do something about it. And for that, the US is developing a brand new weapon designed specifically for this job, the Glide Phase Interceptor, or GPI. This quote from Northrop Grumman, who's building the GPI, really nails why it's so important. The keyword here is standoff. What that means is the ability to engage the threat far, far away from what it's trying to hit. You want to take this fight far out at sea, not in your own backyard. It's all about buying distance and therefore safety. So why is it called the Glide Phase Interceptor? Well, because that's the ideal time to strike. The glide phase is the longest part of the weapon's journey. Its main rocket engine has already burned out, and it's just coasting through the upper atmosphere before it makes its final dive. That gives you the biggest possible window to get your own interceptor in the air and on its way. Right, we've spotted the target, we've launched our interceptor. Now for the truly mind-bending part, the final moments of the engagement. We're going to zoom all the way in to the very tip of that interceptor, to a piece of tech simply called the kill vehicle. So let's walk through this final sequence. The GPI launches from a Navy ship. Its big rocket boosters fire and then fall away. Then, with just seconds to go, the kill vehicle separates and is flying on its own. It uses its own onboard sensors to find the incoming threat and lock on. And then, in those last critical milliseconds, it fires these tiny little thrusters to make tiny, precise adjustments to its trajectory, lining up for a perfect head-on collision. And this right here is the magic that makes it possible. It's called a TDACS, a throttleable divert and attitude control system. Basically, it's a bunch of tiny rocket motors studded all over the kill vehicle. We're not talking about big, powerful moves here. We're talking about incredibly precise little nudges that steer it with pinpoint accuracy to hit a target that is also moving at thousands of miles per hour. It is astonishingly difficult. And that brings us to the core concept, hit to kill. There is no bomb on the kill vehicle, no explosive warhead. It doesn't need one. The sheer, raw, kinetic energy of two objects colliding at these insane speeds is more than enough to completely obliterate the target. It is quite literally hitting a bullet with another bullet. And to put a number on that energy, the impact releases around 130 megajoules. Now, that probably doesn't mean much, so think of it this way. That's the same energy as detonating about 70 pounds of TNT. And all of that destructive force comes from nothing more than pure speed. So when you pull the lens back, what does all this incredible technology really mean? Well, building a shield that can actually stand up to hypersonic weapons, that's not just some cool science project. It has huge strategic implications for the entire world. What it really all boils down to is this. It changes the math for any potential attacker. It introduces doubt. It makes their attack planning way more complicated. If an adversary isn't 100% sure their super advanced, super expensive weapon is actually going to hit its target, they might think twice about launching it in the first place. And that uncertainty is the very essence of deterrence. It protects troops, it reassures allies, and it means you can't be bullied out of a region by the threat of some unstoppable weapon. Which kind of leaves us with one last big question. As the shield gets better, you know the sword is going to get sharper. For every new defense like GPI, you can bet someone is already working on a new offensive weapon to defeat it. This incredible high-stakes race between offense and defense, it's not ending anytime soon. In fact, it might be just getting started.